All set, Maureen?
Yes.
Okay, it is 6:10. Planning board meeting is now opened. First thing on our agenda is 855 Broadway site plan, as-built and bond release. Please state your name for the record. Here's a copy of the as-built.
Brian Dunn with MDL Land Development and Permitting with offices at 480 Turnpike Street in southeastern Massachusetts. With me this evening is Mr. Yanni Stavros of Supreme Enterprises and the owner of the property, and Mr. Dan Vieira, his attorney. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we've presented an as-built plan of the conditions that are out there as of today. The site plan has been constructed in general conformance with the approved site plan, and we are asking for you to accept the as-built plan and also release any funds that are on file with the planning board that Mr. Davos has paid as part of the site plan approval process.
Okay. We did have a couple of things. John, have you been out there since?
Yeah.
They had, this was requested about a month ago or so, I think it was.
Right, well, as you know, we've been keeping an eye on this for a while, and there were other issues that were taken care of along the way. The last time this was brought before the board, the only two remaining issues were submitting an as-built that shows the dumpster at the back corner of the building, right there, which it does, because the previous plan did not show that. Everything else conforms. This was one of the only things, and the other issue was there were a few dead arborvitaes on the residential property. So in looking at this, they've added the dumpster pad. The only other issue to discuss is the issue of the arborvitaes. Other than that, the actual site plan conforms to what's out there.
Okay. Have the arborvitaes been replaced?
No, the arborvitaes have not been replaced. Yanni Stavros didn't want to replace them, or didn't feel that he was really required to replace them, because subsequent this, after we got our site plan approval, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, we went under construction. Mr. Davos cleaned up this buffer zone area, made it look really, really nice, put the bark mulch in, got rid of all of the dying and weeds that were out there, the dying stuff, and then cleaned it up, put the arborvitaes in, and as soon as the landscaping area was in place, Yannis was watering them on a daily basis. After the landscaping buffer was planted, the abutter placed a stockade fence prohibiting Mr. Davos to access the property and continue to water the bushes that planted. So therefore, a few of those arborvitaes did die. And then also recently, that same abutter had a new gas line installed into his home and directed the gas company to put the gas line right through those bushes. And I have pictures of that if you'd like to see that. So
Yeah, I would.
there's an issue with the abutter that really doesn't care about the landscaping that Mr. Davos has placed in on his property, and is really not allowing him to maintain it. So we don't feel that Mr. Davos should have to replace the arborvitaes that have died.
Did the neighbor give him a letter stating not to go onto his property?
No, and actually we can talk about that, and Mr. Vieira is here. He can talk about the legal issues with that. If you remember when Mr. Davos developed this site and subdivided the back lot, there was a requirement for this buffer zone and that easement to be there for the access to that property. But unfortunately, the attorney at the time did not record the easement, so the easement is not there. So there's no means or methods for Mr. Davos to access his property. There's no easement for him to use. So we planted the trees as part of the requirement of the site plan approval that we got back in 2000.
If I remember, though, the requirement for you planting those trees was because Mr. Davos went and cut down a lot of the brush that was there and went onto the property and did some trimming and cutting, and if I remember,
I
wasn't
thought that he
that-
was only trimming and cutting the stuff that was adjacent to the asphalt that was on his property. He
Well, that
did not,
was-
he only went on to the abutting property after we came to site plan approval to clean up the entire area and then replant it.
My memory of what the abutter originally said was that, because the asphalt goes right up to the property line.
That's
So
correct.
cutting any trees had to be on the neighbor's land. So there were trees cut, but that being said, the abutter put up a fence?
The abutter put up a...
Because I think we said either put up a fence or plant some trees.
That's correct, and I think that if, in hindsight, I think that if the abutter said, I am intending on putting up a fence, that we would have agreed to some type of monetary value to help pay for the fence, or pay part of the fence, instead of placing all of this beautiful landscaping over there, only to find out subsequently that we had every intention of putting up a stockade fence.
Hmm.
And then, as of 2 weeks ago, the gas company dug a trench right through the middle of the bushes.
Is the butter present? No? Okay, Burke?
Well, they wouldn't even have known to have been here anyway, right?
No, I didn't know if
Yeah.
they,
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't have gotten notice. I'd like to hear what he has to say, but again, if he put a fence up, and at some point, if he really cared about the trees, I think he'd maintain them. They are on his property.
Russ?
You got pictures of what the gas company did?
Oh, these aren't
Just the pictures of the fence.
John went out there and didn't see it.
Is the fence facing in or out towards his property?
The fence is facing, well,
The good side of the
the
fence?
good side is facing Yanis's. So the stockade fence is,
Just one picture's enough. Yeah, if you have something, that shows the fence ready to be installed, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't really show much.
No.
It's in the back of the trailer.
Oh.
I guess.
How do we know it's up?
John went out there, John went out there and
This has
saw
been
it.
on the radar for a while.
and we have the stockade
So
fence
I've been out there
on the
many
plan.
times, so.
So is the
They've been
stockade,
taking care of there were more issues originally about probably 8-9 months ago, and they've been taking care of issues a couple at a time, and the only remaining issues now were the as-built showing that existing dumpster
but
and the arborvitae's.
the stockade fence, John, that blocks all the trees, the view of them?
Yeah.
So it serves the same purpose as if
Right,
trees were
exactly.
there?
Yeah,
So
it's a 6-foot-high
dead
stockade
arborvitae,
fence.
you wouldn't know the difference if it
No,
was there or
because
not?
to tell you the truth, Chris, from the parking lot, you can only see the very top 6 inches of
Well,
those arborvitae.
Dead arborvitae, this is the homeowner over
Yeah.
here, so they won't see the dead arborvitae, the homeowner does.
Yep,
So I'm not sure if,
yep.
like Burke said though, it was either fence or bushes, and the homeowner did a fence in lieu of,
It's a nice looking fence.
so,
Well, you know, problems, and I'm not just talking generally, you put in trees like that, and if you have cars coming around the corner, it comes right through the trees into your house. So I can understand why the guy would rather have a fence, but I also agree.
well, he was here though, he was here that
Yeah.
night that we had the hearing,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it was, we thought it was pretty understood that for him to work with,
So this is standing on Gilmore, looking into the property, and the stockade fence is over here. And that's the area of, so you can see the
yeah, I see the
inside of
fence, and I see,
stockade fence.
well, it looks like they went between them,
They went
or
right between them.
Does it look okay there?
where they went, I'm sure it's the only place the gas company had had a place to go. They didn't ruin any of the shrubs or anything. From when this came up months back, when I told John to let the applicant know that the dead shrubs had to be replaced. It was my opinion that, in my recollection, that he did go onto the property. That was what the neighbor said that night of the hearing. Went on the property and he started cutting and clearing. So we asked to have the shrubs put up at that time. The fence issue, who did it, why he did it.
I guess he did, because he didn't think the shrubs were giving him enough privacy. And, you know, it would have been easier if he was told us at the hearing that's what he was going to do.
Well, he could have saved himself a lot of money too, because I'm sure
They would have paid for
they
it.
would have rather had put up a fence.
Yep.
Or split it with him or something, so I'm gonna, I had abstained, I think, on that evening for voting on this.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, you did abstain.
So I'm gonna move on to Burke. You all set with it?
I think I am.
Anybody else
have anything to say?
I'm all set.
Chris? So, if you'd like to,
I would make a motion that we accept as the as-built plan, the plan entitled Site As-Built Plan for 855 Broadway by Land Development Permitting Court. And that's it. Second,
Second.
for discussion? Anybody want to add anything?
Date on the plan, please.
August 26, 2014.
August 26, 2014.
No further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4, 1, 6. I'll abstain. Is there a letter or motion to that?
How much money are we holding?
There's a little over 3,500, I have to double check.
Okay. I make a motion that we also release any funds that are remaining.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Did you abstain?
okay, very good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the
right.
board.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, next on our agenda, Route 44 Toyota reconditioning shop, site plan, as-built plan, and bond release. State your name for the record.
Brian Dunn with MBL Land Development and Permitting with offices at 480 Turnpike Street in southeastern Mass. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'm here on behalf of Route 44 Toyota, and with me this evening is Mr. Bob Barboza, one of the owners, Kevin Perry, and attorney Dan Vieira. Just like Mr. Davos's project, we're asking for acceptance of this as-built plan and a release of any funds that are in the planning board account for this project. The as-built plan shows substantial completion and conformance with the approved plans, and that's why we are asking for that bond money to be released back to Mr. Barboza and Route 44 Toyota.
Thank you. Now, you were in front of us a few weeks ago because there was a question about an area between or behind, was it behind or?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the two garden areas.
State your name for the record,
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry, Kevin Perry from Route 44 Toyota.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
So we had discussed that, and the board agreed that it wasn't a major issue or concern of ours for you to have to go ahead and do that. You had mentioned you might do a gazebo or something for people to go out there for smoking or what have you. John, is there anything else?
No, just,
We did ask for the
the
trees.
trees, yes, the trees along western property line between the Route 44 Toyota and the Hyundai dealership. I believe there were about 10 trees or so that the board asked to be replaced.
No, they're not on this plan, that'd be, I believe, to the east.
You said west or east?
The westerly, yes.
Oh, the westerly
If-
side?
West will be over here, right?
If you're facing the Toyota dealership, it's to the left.
Narragansett Street.
Along
Right.
Narragansett
there.
Street. Yeah, that's to the west.
Okay, I thought the
Yeah.
Recon building was in the...
No,
It's
the
in the
recon
back.
building's in mine, I'm saying the western
Oh, I'm
boundary of the
okay,
property.
okay, okay.
So they
All
need, the board asked that they replace all of the 10 trees along that boundary, and I've been out there a couple times, and the trees were installed pretty soon after that meeting, and they look healthy and they look good at this point, so, yeah.
Okay.
Only that, I don't think that sewer easement you have is accurate, but you showed it inaccurate on the last plan. That's actually way over, I think it's way over here.
Yeah, that's,
It's not even, it goes
that's,
right through the
that's
building.
remnant of the survey that Bennett Engineering did
Yeah.
a few years ago. And I asked him about that easement, and he said to leave it on the plan, because that's the record information he had, Mr. Gallagher. But I do remember having that conversation with you, yes.
Yeah, well, that was the one that came from Deer Hollow with the force main.
That's correct,
And it's not even, it shows it going right through the middle of the building,
right.
which I doubt they dug a trench with an excavator through the middle of your building. But that's way down this end of the property.
Now, would the sewer department have,
Yeah, it's on Deer Hollow's record plans.
They would have it-
It went through Linwood Hudson's property, then hit the back of the Toyota dealership, then ran the back lot line, and
now, we're accepting this as a true and accurate as-built, though.
Yeah, that's-
Should we be,
I pointed that out last time. It's totally wrong, but I don't think it affects what they're doing here as far as the reconditioning shop. I'm just pointing it out to
would
Brian here.
legal team, is it something that,
Doesn't get recorded.
no, I know, but if somebody comes in for future, putting an addition or doing something,
Yeah, I think it'd be taken care of. They could just add something saying the 10-inch, the 10-foot wide sewer easement in the north to south area, wherever, is incorrectly portrayed on here.
Yeah, I believe so.
just so, we're all sitting here saying the sewer line's not right. Well, I think it should be documented somewhere. Instead of redoing the whole
Yeah,
plan.
it's just the sewer
If-
easement, not the sewer line.
The sewer easement, I'm sorry. So, I think just something that should be on the plan, so if 5 years down the road, we can look up this plan.
I think when I went over this before, you took it off like the Raynham GIS site, and that's why you were inaccurate, so it wasn't done by survey.
Is it something that we can just
And-
have them
I
write on it and
wouldn't-
sign it?
I wouldn't put
date
my
it?
stamp
Or
on
is
it.
it something that we would require, just to have him put another note on it? Bring Maureen, 3 new copies, and
We can easily take it off and give you 3 more copies if you're willing, if the board requires that, because it's very easy to take it off.
Yeah, I'd rather you do
Is
that.
it-
'cause
I'll
it's
take it off,
inaccurate.
and then
Does
if
our
you can
site plan
vote to have,
require it,
It's irrelevant to the plan, but it's inaccurate, so you
I'd
don't
rather
want to
not have
have
it on there than have
plans
something
showing an
wrong.
easement that's inaccurate.
At least if it's not on there, then I know I have to go looking for it. If I'm looking at this plan and I don't see the sewer, I have to go look for it. By
Just
having
was-
it on there, it just worries me.
It was
So is
taken
it
off like
incorrect over here,
the
too?
town's GIS site on the assessors, which is like so incredibly inaccurate from a survey point of view. And this was shown on the last plan, and that's why when Bobby came in with the Hyundai dealership, the real sewer main was down that side, and damn lucky he never took one of the light poles, drilling down for the light poles. You probably come within 1 foot of it without puncturing it. And so they were putting all light poles down the easement. And because it was shown inaccurately,
Yeah,
because
I
they took it
remember
off a
I remember you
USGS
talking
plan
about it.
instead of by actual survey, which is, I mean, if you're taking stuff off the town assessor's website, that's insane, doing it that way instead of doing it by true survey. But it actually, ran down the lot lines, and it wasn't shown on the last plan accurately, so they were drilling light poles, and luckily we didn't hit anything. Turned out it was no big deal and
Yeah,
worked out, but, if you're gonna do a plan,
yeah, if we, why don't
if
we,
you're gonna stamp it, you
we can
should
vote
have-
on it?
But can I just ask another question of Chris? Now, if this is taken off the GPS, is there other stuff here that's
I have
incorrect?
I have no
mean,
idea.
If this
but I
is
know
supposed
this-
to be a
this easement-
survey, isn't it done, by hand?
All right,
Allegedly.
let's back up. Hold on for a second. We did an on-the-ground field survey. We had existing data of an easement. The original surveyor at the time showed the easement there incorrectly, as Mr. Gallagher stated. We corrected that. Unfortunately, it stayed on the CAD file, and we plotted it up. We can take the easement off. The rest of the information is accurate.
You mentioned that this site plan was in substantial conformance. What part is not in conformance?
That's a term that we say when we're asking for an as-built plan to be accepted, where the inverts might be a couple of tenths off or a couple of hundredths off, or the curbing is, half an inch back of where it should have been, or something like that. So it's not exactly what was on the site plan, but it's been constructed in the same general conformance of what was approved.
Okay, I mean, for the record, this is a plan that's gonna be in our files, so I'd rather have this easement off, as I know it was.
Right.
What happened is, he did his plan earlier with the site plan, had inaccurate information, and just got carried through. And I know I pointed it out before, but we don't want to mislead anybody that this easement is here. It shows it going right through the middle of a building, which is not where you put a sewer easement.
All right.
So
We can just
So
do
we can do it and have him come back with a plan to eliminate that.
Yeah, so if we make a motion, what we'll do, the second motion is releasing the funds, and we can hold the funds until we receive the new set of plans,
acceptable to the
Yeah, that's-
planning board.
and then that way there, we're covered, and
But pretty much as long as they take that.
that's all we need,
off,
just
that's it.
get rid of the sewer easement.
Yeah, in the future, someone comes to the planning board office pulling plans, they pull this, and it's gonna mislead them.
Yeah. So, everybody all set with that?
Yeah.
Make a motion?
Make a motion, we accept the plan entitled Site As-Built Plan 1134 New State Highway Route 44 by Land Development and Permitting Corp. Dated August 26, 2014. Subject to the sewer easement being removed from the plan as it is inadequate. Or incorrect, I should say.
Second for discussion?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And
I make a motion that upon receipt and review of a revised as-built plan for 1134 New State Highway Route 44, that we release any project funds that we are holding.
second for discussion? Any discussion on releasing the project review funds or any funds that we are holding? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
What I would like to do is we had 3 copies? Okay. I would like to get rid of, hand back 2. I'd like to keep 1. As soon as that new plan is brought in, I don't know, John, if you want to I want that one to be destroyed, just thrown away,
Once the new one comes in.
but I want you to just, take a peek from one to the other, just to make sure all the main points are there, and then, all right?
The other 2 destroyed?
I gave them
Again,
back.
I have them here.
I gave them back.
Yeah, it'll be there on Monday.
All right, very good, thank
Thank you
you, and
very
thank you
much.
for replacing all those trees.
Thank you, gentlemen. Do I just, after Brian gets in, can I just come by?
It'll take at least a week to process. I'll let you
All
know.
right, so a couple of weeks.
I'll let
I'll
you
come
know.
by in a couple of weeks.
Okay, you're gonna pick it up?
Yeah, I'll pick it up.
Okay,
All right?
yep.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
See you. All right? Thank you, we'll see you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Metro Ford, Kia, determination for abbreviated site plan submittal. State your name for the record.
Brian Dunn with MBL Land Development and Permitting, with offices at 480 Turnpike Street in Southeastern. With me representing Metro Ford Kia VW is Paul Belay. and Attorney Dan Vieira. We have a preliminary site plan in front of you to discuss with you the process of going forward with a site plan approval application, and we would like to discuss the option of doing a abbreviated site plan application for these proposed additions. We show the proposed additions in various locations of the site. We have a new car delivery to the front of the existing Kia building, right next to the transformer. There's an area of the front of the building which would be modified a little bit with a new front fascia, and also a small area to expand the showroom to the right of the building. We're also adding approximately 3,800 square feet in the rear of the existing service area with, I think it's 7 more bays, 7 more service bays in the back of this building. All of these additions would be in existing, asphalted area. Between the Kia building and the Ford building, there's going to be a new wall and a corridor constructed to show separation of the two buildings from the Kia building to the Ford building. The Ford entrance is going to have a new, fascia placed on the front of the building, and a little bit of a new entrance, a little expanded entrance. On the right, on this left side of the Ford building, facing from 44.
Excuse me. You want to use your pointer? We have a lot of people that watch this on a Thursday evening.
So there's a proposed addition over here. This is going to be the new drive-through service area with 3 overhead doors coming in. So this would be the service drive-in area for the Ford building. And then, of course, this would remain the service area for the Kia building. So that what they're trying to do is separate the two different service write-up areas from Kia to Ford. This area here is also within an area of existing pavement. And, we show a little bit of the landscaping being expanded in the front and some curbing on this side as well as this side over here.
Okay, so
The one major thing that I see is we're covering up some handicap spots, or the building is going into the parking lot, taking up existing parking spots. Did you have any provisions for?
Well, yes, we would end up relocating the handicap spaces, and then, placing, the 3 or 4 spaces that we're losing over here somewhere on the site, on the other side of the building. And then we have to have access coming out here with one of the doors. So there's a doorway here, so the cars can be stacked here without losing any of the spaces over in this area here. So we're probably losing, 4 here and 3 over here, something like that, for these additions to go in, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, if you have the front of the Ford building, or no, I'm sorry, not the Ford, the middle building, is that Kia?
This one here? This is the
Yes.
Kia building, yes.
The facade or the front of that is being redone,
Yes,
and Ford?
and Ford.
No, just the entrance.
Just the entrance.
We call it a trust mark arch.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
State your name for the record.
Paul Belay from Metro Motor Group.
Thank you. And I'll call on you when you,
This is
so,
here.
the front of the Kia, it looks like, is that all being worked on? The whole front of the Kia?
Yes,
Okay, and just the entrance of the Ford, but it's going to be maintained in the same location
right.
as the current
It's the
entrance?
same doorway, they're just expanding it out a little bit
Okay.
into the landscaping area that's there, but the sidewalk still would
There's
remain.
an addition on the front here, right?
They're just redoing it.
All right, that's my
It
only
says
questions.
proposed building
Burke?
addition.
What is there now between the 2 buildings?
This little piece here.
In this area right here,
Yes.
this is the existing service right-up drive-through. So when you bring your car for Ford or Kia, You come off of Route 44, you drive in here, and you can drive right in here, have your service manager write up whatever your vehicle needs to be repaired. And then they would, of course, park it somewhere on the site. So this building here is existing. This was the Mazda building that we permitted some 10 years ago. So this area here is where that drive-through is for the service write-ups. They want this to be just for the Kia. So Kia people...
So you're putting up a wall?
Yeah, so there's gonna be a wall placed between the two buildings, and then on the other side of that wall, where there's existing building now, will be just a corridor to pass through.
Any problems with emergency access, exits, or anything?
I don't see any problem with that. There's a door here, there's a door here, there's an existing door here, so there's ample access in and out of the building.
Yes, sir. State your name for the record.
Daniel Vieira. The reason for the original design was that that was a Ford franchise and a Mazda franchise. They are, of course, related to each other. Ford and Mazda have an affiliation with each other. So when those two franchises were operating, the concept was to have a single drive-through. So if you drove on the site, you didn't have to differentiate. You're a Mazda customer of Ford, you didn't have to differentiate. It's the same drive-through. Unfortunately, Kia and Ford are not brother and sister. They're unrelated franchises. So they have to have a separation for their service from each other. So it's taking that existing service, closing it off. It could, I mean, in theory, they could have been, if it had been done originally, they would have never made them connected. It would have just had two buildings separated on the site. So that'll all be constructed in code. It's just that they can't have a shared service area anymore. So they're expanding the Kia front end to have its own service writing entrance and using the existing one for the Ford. So from a design standpoint, the reason it was originally designed that way was because the two franchises actually work together, and now they don't. We would have done it differently.
Henry?
Before it's on abbreviated site plan, should it be abbreviated? There's 10,500 square feet of new buildings going up in 4 different places in one entry change, which is obviously minor. Should we be doing this as an abbreviated, or?
My next question was going to be, what's the square footage now?
Of the total buildings?
Come close, I don't need exact.
I would be totally guessing.
30. It's
Paul,
probably
do you know
about,
how big these buildings are?
probably about 80,000.
20,000.
The what?
The old Mazda building, which is now the Kia building,
Yeah,
is 20,000.
yep,
And the Ford building's probably just around 30.
yep.
So that's what I said, 30, 60, 80, yeah, so 80.
So it's 50,000?
And then this is 25. The VW is 25,
So close to 80,000.
About 80.
Where's the VW?
right over here.
Is that the same parcel?
Looking at it, my own,
This is the VW.
Sort of, they're
over
all-
here.
my only,
That's the VW store right here.
looking at not just the square footage, but we're not getting into drainage, we're not getting into new parking lot. We're striping some, I think maybe 8, we have to find 8 spots.
Do we have the 8 spots here?
Egress and
How do you even
entrances.
tell?
Well, I think typically in car dealerships, you have way more parking that's allowed than that's required, just because, you want to show cars. So every car dealership that's come in here has grossly exceeded the parking requirement. And I'm sure this is the case here. He could provide a calc if he came in, but on what's required, and
I don't think drainage is a real issue. This is on sewer, right?
well, no, it's not.
No, it's not on sewer yet.
It's gonna be shortly, and
Oh, it's not
that's
on
something
sewer?
I gotta talk to him
But
about.
drainage is.
You're taking
parking lot
impervious and
drainage.
making it a roof.
Right.
So you're not changing the drainage characteristics whatsoever. You just basically, instead of pavement, you're gonna have a roof.
In the area to the east, that where they did that
Retaining wall?
that big retaining wall, that whole area, if I remember correctly, that was proposed, a building was going there, so they raised it, they filled it, and they did all that, and now it's just parking lot. And from when, if I remember correctly, when Volkswagen was brought in, we needed some additional parking, and that's why we let that go, because you have done all this, and we said you weren't putting another building here, so that you had more than enough ample parking to have any excess and overflow. So I don't think the parking issue, losing 8 spaces, I don't think that's gonna be a problem, like Chris said. And draining, we're not changing catch basins or runoff, or,
So,
once they go to the building inspector, for the building itself, the building footprint, they'll have to meet all the regulations. I think
so are we okay then treating this as an abbreviated?
Yeah,
I
and
don't
then
see
when
a
it comes
problem
time
with
that
it.
he comes in with an abbreviated site plan, he could do his parking calc to verify that it's in compliance.
Yes, I'm sorry, John.
Just make a quick comment. I know this was the case with 252 Bright Street. Even with abbreviated site plan reviews, there is still a project review fee that is required of the applicant in case during the public hearing process, the board feels the need to bring in Beals and Thomas to take a look at what's going on. So even though it's abbreviated site plan review, if a red flag comes up and the board needs to look at something, or wants Beals and Thomas to look at something, we'll have that to do that if it comes up, either.
And if
during
not,
the-
then the petitioner can ask for the money to be released.
What would the
Exactly.
filing fee be for a 10,500 square foot site plan?
Under a,
Regular site plan review? Probably a bit.
why?
I was wondering.
I don't know if the top of my head.
Factor when we determine whether we should.
I was speaking through Henry.
Well, I don't think that should be a factor when
No, I know, I know.
we're determining if it's a.
It's roof over pavement, so we've done this before.
I
so
think
don't
we're
have a
looking
big
at
deal
Like I
with it.
said, there will be the mechanism if something comes up.
Right.
Either during the public hearing process or after, during construction, the board will have some funds available to at least have the peer review engineer take a look at it and make sure everything works.
Yeah, I mean, the parking behind the 3,840 square foot addition, so I guess that would be on the south side of the Kia building. Be tough to park in those parking spaces, so I don't know what your plans are with those.
Right, because there's a door there, and if they're.
Well, I mean, they're right up to the building, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I
they're-
think that what they use in these are spaces that are pretty much used by the service techs or the guys that are cleaning the cars. So they have keys to the cars, they can double, tandem park the cars and move them as they wish.
We understand, but you're not gonna have a parking spot directly, all these parking spots directly against the building, and directly in front, there's a door there.
Right, so, but there's ample room to slide those
Okay.
out, black them
Yeah,
out,
and
restripe
that'll be
it.
reflected in your
Yes.
previous,
So-
site plan.
Again, I don't think,
Does this
we're not
show where the
changing, we're not impacting
moving?
drainage or anything else.
He'd have to show where his handicap's moving to.
I don't see that it should be a
Also have to show
full-blown,
his new parking layout.
my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with
Kirk?
that.
I think it's right on the borderline between the two. It's fairly major, but you guys are right, it's not gonna change drainage and some of the other issues we have, and there's plenty of parking. So I guess I could go along with it as an abbreviated.
Russ? Henry?
All set. I just brought it up.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. And just as a sidebar to, while you're here, we're gonna be running the sewer there soon. And we need to know where you need.
Need the stubs?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, like ASAP.
Okay.
So I know you had one set up over here, and I didn't know if that was the only one, but.
No, there's a few of them. So I will talk to Lopes and Joe Ritchie and Paul Belay tomorrow morning, and we'll plot up a solution for you and get you a plan.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna be there within weeks, so.
Okay,
We're gonna need to know.
that's great news.
You know.
Okay, so, motion is made to allow this to come in as an abbreviated site plan. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous?
But that's, I mean, next week would be good on that, if you could.
You do understand, we are gonna ask for parking, make sure that what's required, give us what's required with current buildings.
Yeah.
And give us, how many you have over and where you're moving them to, and
Okay.
Those are really gonna be, our biggest, our biggest thing. You're gonna be tying in roof drains, I'm sure. You have, when you add on to the building, you're gonna be adding over, so where are those current roof drains running? Make sure any roof drains are tied in and not running across the parking lot, and make sure you show that too.
Okay.
And then just, black scale your new parking with the gray scale underneath. So
Okay.
Striping's gonna be.
All right?
Thank you very much.
Very good,
Appreciate it.
thank you. We need any of those, we just pass them out, get rid of them.
That stinks, when they first showed me, when he showed me, you're only running partway up, and I looked at the plan, and we're gonna see all the way. Southwest's not gonna be happy. We were gonna save some money on that one.
Oh,
But I looked, that picture all the way to the other side of the Ford dealer. And they had told me that someone going one, you keep it close way in Kia. So just a lot of work. No big deal.
okay, 6:15, Carlton Street subdivision. This is a continued public hearing.
We just have one.
We do have a full board, and this has been continued a couple of times. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ed Brennan. I'm an attorney with an office at 1 Church Green in Taunton, and I represent the applicant here tonight, which is Sandy Hill Nominee Trust. It's the owner of the property, which is the subject of the two-lot subdivision. I think the board is quite familiar with this site. We've been in on numerous occasions to discuss different facets of the subdivision prior to filing the subdivision. We did file it in late spring. The board referred it out to Beals and Thomas. The project engineer, Silver Engineering Associates, has responded to the comment letter by Beals and Thomas, and that was submitted to the board at the last meeting, I believe it was August 21st. So we're here tonight. I can give an overview of the project. I think the board will recall.
People in North Raynham would start by telling us where we are.
I will. Okay, this is the property is located on what's known as Carlton Street, which is a paper street off of Raymond Avenue, which originates, how do you use this? Which originates off of, in the area of Sandy Hill and South Street. So,
Push the button and point.
yeah, it's not staying on.
It's just,
Is it?
Yeah, top of the
it's
ceiling.
on now.
It's on the ceiling there.
There you go.
Okay, so we're off of South Street. Raymond Avenue comes down, it goes in a westerly direction, and then Carlton Street goes southerly. And this site is located on the westerly side of Carlton Street, which is a paper street. The site is undeveloped. Carlton Street is undeveloped. The property consists of about 2.21 acres of land. The proposal is to improve Carlton Street sufficiently to service the lots in question. The board may recall that we were here last winter and we submitted some aerial photos, some GSI information about what the potential development might be in a particular neighborhood of the lots. And we concluded that there may be the possibility of a lot on the other side of Carlton Street, maybe two lots, and these two lots that we're proposing tonight, and that you go into a significant area of wetlands. It was based on that finding that we submitted as a two-lot subdivision and have requested certain waivers from the board's rules and regulations. An overview of how the road will be constructed if approved. It does have water and sewer, and it would have 18 feet of pavement for the length of the two lots. Yep. Let me just change pictures here.
I presume the people down back are interested in this? Is there any way we could make it so they could see it too?
They can move up.
They'd have to move up, I think.
Yeah, because if you, you can come right up to the front, because if we turn it, then I'm not sure the camera, he won't be able to see it, so.
Okay, and this is the plan that I spent, the plan hasn't changed since we were here 2 weeks ago, and I spent a considerable time with two of the neighbors at that point, so they may be familiar with the plan. This is what I went over with them after the last meeting. So you can see where the property is situated on Carlton Street. Raymond Avenue comes down. This is the large perimeter of the 2.21 acre parcel. We're showing it divided into two single-family house lots on the east side of Carlton. The frontage would be about, including the turnaround that the fire department has required of us, it's about 410 feet of frontage will be created between the two lots, which includes the curb for the radius emergency vehicle turnaround. There will be drainage in an open trench swale type along the front of the lots, ending up on a drainage area on lot number 2. The proposal is to keep the entire Carlton Street and the drainage system all will be private. We're not asking the town to accept this as a public way or to accept maintenance of the drainage areas. The proposed pavement is 18 feet wide. We're asking for certain waivers from sidewalks, curbing, et cetera. A drainage study has been conducted. Drainage calculations were submitted by Civil Engineering, and soil testing did take place out there in July. So we believe that we've presented a fairly engineered plan to support the construction that may exist on the improvement to this particular street to service the lots in question. So we're asking the board to make a determination that those improvements are adequate and to approve this as a two-lot subdivision.
Thank you. I guess my first question is going to be, we have a letter from the Highway Department, and this goes back dated 7/16, 2014. His concerns that are on here may have been addressed through the latest Silver Engineering. Has the Highway Department been presented with a new plan for him to give his comments? And, because he has quite a few.
On the last page of Mr. Silver's response letter of August 21st, he addresses the Raynham Highway Department's comments. But the revised plan and this revised comment letter has not been submitted to the Raynham Highway Department.
Basically, just to summarize what he's saying is he doesn't like the country style drainage.
Correct.
He thinks it's going to be a maintenance issue.
But it's
Tell you the
gonna be
truth,
private.
with a subdivision this size, you're not required to meet best management practices and the DEP standards. So I kind of tend to agree with him that this is total overkill. I know what Larry's trying to do, and he's trying to comply with these standards, even though 4 lots or less, you don't have to. I think it'd be better served just by grading on your lots, have the drainage go down kind of swales in the middle of the lots and get rid of all this stuff myself. And then wouldn't have the maintenance problem, you wouldn't have the pipes under your driveway, and you could handle it by grading your lots properly. And, you know, you're gonna put all this stuff in that nobody's ever gonna maintain. It's gonna be 100 feet from someone's house. You're gonna have pipes in the road, and that's, just by the grades that drop so much from the street to the back of the lots, you could easily just grade a swale between both lots while you build the house, which is what your site guy would do anyway if he had any brains, because he'd want the runoff to go away from the house. But that would, in my opinion, as a professional engineer, I'd get rid of that whole drainage system and just grade your lots accordingly. You just have swales between the houses.
So that brings up another question then. This is going to be maintained as a private way. And what Mr. Gallagher said, if all this drainage gets put in, the piping, who's going to maintain?
The lot owners have
When you're
to
dealing with two
maintain
different
it.
people, and it just should be a lot easier to just, I mean, you're dropping from 56 down to 44, you're 12 feet in 100 feet. I'm sure you can build a swale that'll work there, you know? And, you know, you could just do a swale between the house lots, and it would just run naturally the way it's gonna run to the wetland, instead of having to deal with, they're both gonna share responsibility for the road, and maintenance for the drainage, be one less thing to argue about, I think. And I think you'd be better served having it slope down to the wetland across grass and through the lawn instead of through all these check dams and forebays.
I'm concerned about other lots, and I understand there's a possibility, maybe 2 other lots before you really hit the wetlands.
Yeah, so you're still under the criteria for the BMPs. I mean, you, at most you'd have, I don't even know if you have enough for 2, but across the street where it's shown as Crowley property,
I think last time when this
and I
came in,
think that's why the pavement was 18 feet.
I think we
thinking-
figured.
We were thinking that.
Right, it would be possible, max would be another 2,
Yeah.
because beyond that was all wetlands. And I think one of the exercises that we had asked Attorney Brennan was, you bringing us a plan, we don't see any wetland. Where's the, wetland, so we can come up with some sort of best guess estimate of how many more houses can be built
You mean the wetlands across the street, the end of it?
all around,
Which
even
we
on that
don't see.
Pine Street, because we were concerned that this could keep going. And
You see the
So,
wetland line
right,
crosses Pine Street.
right.
there.
So I think months back, we determined that, okay, max this area could be four houses altogether.
They submitted a lot of aerial photos,
Right.
GSI stuff last winter when we
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
trying to
That was-
decide
that's what I'm
what
talking
would the
about.
extent of the improvements be necessary for this street. And the board rightfully said, well, where's it going, what can you do with it? So Mr. Silva put together a package of the GSI aerial photos to show what is wetlands out there in relation to Carlton Street. And the conclusion was possibly 2 more across the street, which is why we kind of engineered this the way we did. It was to accommodate a possible 4 lots.
No, I mean, if it was just 2 lots, it'd be served by a gravel road, but I guess with possibly
Right.
4, that's why you're having the 18 feet of pavement. The one thing this, I guess, would provide is, the fire department, I guess was, from what I understand, was adamant about making a big cul-de-sac.
Correct.
Raymond Ave's a dead-end street right now, and I guess they must turn around on this little piece of property, the stub of the road. So this would give the fire department turnaround for the entire Raymond Ave, and that must be why they focused on making such a big turnaround.
Does the turnaround all asphalt and stuff? And
No,
what's
it's
the what?
gravel, but it gives, right now, they don't have anything, and this would give the fire department a
Well,
complete
this is gonna be
turnaround.
paved, right? 18
That's
This is
paved.
gonna
Be
be
paved up to this point.
And then the circle in the end would be
Circle would be
gravel.
gravel.
Yeah, the cutoff point of the pavement
What's
is
the
right
height,
at the transition.
H2, H20, H something?
Yeah.
H20 load.
Page 20
Does
low.
it say that on here?
Yeah.
I do not know.
Where does it say H20 on the turnaround?
I don't, I'm not sure where it says.
Probably on the cross-section of the roadway. I would think the base is gonna be all the same. Compact gravel Rick? Questions, concerns?
Well, my concern is, taking our best guess that we might have 2 more houses after that, are we setting this up in a direction to go with 4 houses?
What it's,
Well, I think yes. I think it's up to us to look ahead.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at this, we can't look at this as just 2 lots, and I think that was something that a year ago or 2 years ago when this came in front of us, I think that was what we looked at. And, because it might have even been 2 years ago when this came in front of us, and we were concerned that Pine Street could be developed, and that this would be, I think they originally wanted to have a gravelled egress to get in there, and we had Carlton, Pine, all the way back and up to Sandy Hill, and that was our concern. And then since then, we had asked, and he came in with that,
Well, we had a couple of different proposals, as you might recall. One was a hammerhead, one was a half circle, and one was this. And after going through the process with the fire department, we ended up with a cul-de-sac. And after going through the process of what potential future development might be out there, we came up with this plan, which was fairly, comprehensive engineering, but not built out with sidewalks, curbing, et cetera, et cetera. So really, I guess the issue is the country drain, which is the swale along the front of the property lines, which will take the water back to the holding area, the detention area on lot number 2. But this will all be private, so it's going to be up to the homeowners.
I mean, my opinion, and I side with the highway department, even though it is the homeowners, you're adding a maintenance nightmare that, really isn't necessary. And I think you'd be better served grading your lots accordingly. I mean, these are, proposed houses, they could change a lot, but I think you'd be better served just, you have the grade to do it. Why not, take advantage of that?
I don't have the plan in front of me, but it shows a swale along the road.
It shows a swale along the road, so you'd be having pipes in
So instead,
driveways.
you run the swale between the houses.
Run it between the houses. You don't have the pipes, you don't have a swale to clean and maintain, and you're just gonna have a side yard that's graded like a lawn. And
you have a runoff.
And the runoff's gonna get treated through the grass.
Now, I wanna-
Just as good as it's gonna get treated through
I would like to,
1, 2, 3, 4 sediment floor bays and a detention basin.
I'd like to back up 1 minute too.
Just for the record, we say, and we look at this as our best guess, possibly being 4 houses. The plan is in front of us for 2. There could be, just because we're looking at it and saying maybe there's a possibility of 2 more houses being built, that doesn't mean that that's all the houses that are gonna be built. When somebody buys a house and they say, oh, nobody's gonna ever be able to build next to you, that's not something that this board is saying. We're looking at it as common sense, that's all we can do, looking at pictures, looking at wetland lines.
But it remaining as a private way, if someone were to come into this board down the line, looking to extend that and add to it in a different direction, you could then require upgrades to Carlton Street.
And that's exactly what we do and we have done on other private ways in town. The reason why this was, we were looking at this in having pavement in front of majority of this property, even though across the street's gonna benefit, it has to get done because you have to access your own lots. So by you doing the improvements for these 2 houses, you're actually helping whoever's across the street because their improvements are gonna be done already. They will have to come back in front of us. We're gonna see if things are working. We're gonna see if there's issues out there at that time, highway or anybody else in town, neighbors, things can be readdressed at that time if somebody else wants to build. Doesn't mean that this is what's being laid down on the road right now is forever, and we can and we do have the right to extend or improve it. Yes, Bert?
If those other 2 houses got built, what direction do we think their drainage would go? And is what Chris is talking about adequate? Would it go in the direction across these 2 lots?
Yeah, it would go in the direction, but it would sheet flow hundreds of feet till it hit the wetlands.
So maybe we want a drainage, an easement to the town between the 2 houses?
I mean, with the DEP's stormwater best management practices, none of this is required. And in the case of adding 2 more houses, my years of doing it, it would simply sheet flow down to the road, go down the road, and then sheet flow a couple hundred feet till it hit the wetland, and I don't see any detriment to removing this thing, I think.
Okay, so it
It's more of
doesn't,
a
you don't think it
nuisance.
needs to go through these 2 lots?
No. It would come down to the road, the way the
Okay.
road's graded.
Yep.
It wouldn't go through these 2 lots. It would come down to the road, go down the road, the
So
way
would
he's
those
proposed the
lots on
grading.
the other side maybe need a swale in front of them?
No,
to
they
run
just,
the-
they'd sheet right down to the road, and the way Larry has it graded, it would go across the cul-de-sac and naturally flow right where that basin's showing, right down to the wetland.
See, now, if this came in front of us for somebody to build the 2 houses across the street, I would look at requiring a swale on their side, because I wouldn't want to see their runoff
Go straight
going
Well,
across
I was
Well, it
thinking
wouldn't.
they're gonna have
It wouldn't.
ice on the road.
The road's graded
to intercept it and
to
run it down.
intercept it and run it down.
As long as-
That's how it's graded.
Okay.
It's graded, it's a super elevated road, and it's graded to run down the road and then run
So the
down the
road-
cul-de-sac, so it's
The
takes.
side of the road is actually going to serve as a swale.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but if you get a lot of rainfall, doesn't that affect the flow? You couldn't just go straight across the road?
What was the soil?
It wouldn't, because you're building up all these front yards. You know, these front yards are gonna be, this is 5 feet above the road. So it's not gonna run up the front yard and affect the house lots, it's gonna run down the road.
What was
Take
the
path of least
soil
resistance.
logs? Did we have, I know we did some perks, is it on the plan?
Yeah, it's sandy loam down to, it's just these retarded.
Test pits were conducted August 14th. Groundwater was confirmed at 72
Groundwater is
inches
6 feet. No, this is way down.
in the drainage area.
Yeah, so price they're down 20, elevation 26, so he's got groundwater 25 feet below the road.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a drop of 30, 40 feet from the road to the wetland. That's what I'm saying, you're better off just having a swale, that's where it's going, instead of creating all this nuisance maintenance, you know?
All right, maybe we
It's
can get
just
to
a drastic
some of the
drop.
neighbors while we're, see what some of the concerns are out there. Would you like to, you state your name for the record? Do you have questions, concerns?
Yes, my name is Joseph Lazars. I'm nephew of Winifred Loretto, who lives at 73 Raymond Avenue.
Yeah, would you be able to come up to one of the microphones, even turn this one if you want, you can stand right in the corner, because if you're gonna, yes, if you're gonna speak, could you state your name for the record too, please?
Mrs. Antone Loretto. I live 173 Raymond Avenue.
Okay, thank you. So, you were, what's your concerns or questions?
Our concerns were the groundwater, for one thing. Several years ago, when Raymond Avenue was redone and they put the sewer lines down there, it was graded in a way, or set up in a way, that the water did flow down the street, and the way her house is situated, it's right at the end of the street. And prior to that, she never really had a water problem in her cellar. 2 years ago, the Raynham Fire Department spent 2 separate incidents pumping out her cellar with water. I had helped her fix that problem last year. We put a sub pump in her cellar. I'm just concerned that if you're going to take this street and you're going to pave it, it's right, as it is right now, it's basically a grassy field that's going to absorb the water, any kind of runoff in the area. If you're going to put a pavement across that, where's the runoff going to go? I mean, is it going to go into her cellar more and cause more?
Now, did you have, you said just for, over the last couple of years, you've started getting water in your basement. Did you notify the highway department about maybe possibly doing a berm or something at the very end, or the town, did you?
Was that after, that was after the water line? They had a new water line they put in and repaved the road?
Got water, I got water in the cellar,
So
like
it runs directly down the road, right into the house?
inches of water.
We actually had a snowplow go right up her driveway last winter.
They could actually, I mean, if they're doing this plan and extend it out into the paved section of Raymond Ave, I mean, they'd be stuck with the sewer manhole, but they could actually super elevate that side of the road and direct the water, instead of towards your house, they could have the water run down this road. I mean, it drops from 62 to 36, so it drops 36 feet. But you'd have to rework that last section of Raymond Ave.
In order for it to happen.
And you could turn it. In other words, instead of it coming down the gutter flow, you'd lift one side up, or drop this side probably, and leave this the same, drop this, and you could have it run down that street. so it would run away from her.
Run down Carlton's.
Run down
I'll
Carlton.
give Chris the pointer and he can do it.
Now, if, you were saying something else about your septic system?
What,
Well, the groundwater, she's concerned about it getting into her septic system as well. It is, I mean, granted, it's been dry summer and everything, and things aren't really so wet, but I take care of her property for her. I mow her lawn, and I know in the early spring and even in the winter time, the ground is saturated down in her backyard.
Well, I think with what Chris was saying earlier too, about the way the contours of the slopes, everything's grading that way, which everything's grading right in the direction of your house.
Yes.
I think that's the natural way the water's gonna go. I think more importantly, is there a way for us to help turn that water in a different direction? I think that is, that might help your situation and improve not having water in your basement. If you haven't had water in your basement up to, a couple of years ago when they put in the water main, well, then let's go back prior to them putting in the water drain. How was the elevation and the grades and the slopes? Why all of a sudden, after they did the water, you're getting water in your basement?
When they probably had the road graded before, it probably ran the runoff down, and then when they graded it and re-crowned it, they put it all to her.
They created a sluice way right onto her property.
So this is crowned here, and it's going both ways.
And they had it all run right onto her property when it used to be elevated and run down this way. That was only a couple of years ago they did it, but naturally it used to bypass her and run down this way to the wetland.
Chris, would you want it to run all the way down past what we're looking at, or
It wouldn't have to.
would you put a swale right at the property line running into the wetlands to the?
Yeah,
say
exactly,
right here?
yeah. And you'd put it on lot 60-1.
But he would have to go on.
As he's showing the swale, you'd maintain the swale and then turn it down, and then, stop the country drainage there, but you'd maintain the swale and then turn it down.
Mr. Brennan, could you give the pointer to Chris so he can just explain what he's talking about for this?
What you'd do is, the stuff that's coming down Carlton used to head this way and down. Then when the road got regraded, a lot of it went straight to this house. So
Raymond Street.
you'd have to take that little last
By
portion
the
of
town.
Raymond Ave, repitch it so it heads into this ditch, and then have the ditch turn down this property line and alleviate the water that's going to her house, send it right down, drain it down the property line here,
Now, is that something that,
and just correct the problem that got created a couple of years
is
ago.
that something that
Put it
you
back
could
where
have
it
your
was.
engineer look at?
Yeah, he can talk to me. He'd fully understand how to do it.
Well, I guess, does that mean, does that work in conjunction with abandoning the rest of the swale?
Yeah.
So you'd have a swale on that property line, a swale on this property line?
Yeah.
And another one, or just those two?
No, just those two. And all the rest of it would just run down naturally down the cul-de-sac the way it's graded.
So that would eliminate this whole drainage system here.
Yeah.
So the improvements, instead of doing what's on the end of the street that nobody's gonna benefit by, let's back up and let's fix the problem that's at the beginning of the street.
Well, if you look at the swale now, we're very close to being at the point where that water might be coming onto her property, so.
Well, it's obvious it's coming on her property. She says it's coming on her property. And for them to have water in the basement, there's an issue.
Right, but we're close to already solving it. All that swale would be extended a little further in the north direction, and would intercept that water.
Yeah, without having
She didn't,
actual
it's
spot
50 years,
shots
she
there
hasn't
now,
had
you
water.
wouldn't
and
know.
The town
That's,
paved the street, now she has water. I don't think it'd be difficult to pick it up at that point and take it.
well, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Let's go back, 2-3 years ago, before the water was put in, before she did have water problems, before she did have water problems, I should say. And let's get it back to the way it was, so she doesn't have, and his yard's not being saturated. I mean, right now, no matter what, it's a downward flow. You look down Raymond Avenue, and it's an airport. That road is so big,
It's heading right to my house.
it runs right to your house. There's gotta be a way to intercept it and get it down along the property lines, and then I'll bet you won't have soggy ground.
Yeah, her property would actually have about 100 almost 100 feet of frontage on Carlton Street, because basically, the way the street goes
Right.
down, her property runs, I mean, basically, my uncle, her husband, took care of that for many years. It was just a field, they mowed it, just,
I've got pictures that.
Well, do you want-
took
You've
care
got
of that.
160 feet to the
Yeah,
property line.
so do you see where he's talking, Mr. Gallagher's talking about doing the swale, picking up the water from in front of your house and running it between your property line and the abutter's property line?
Yeah, I mean, you may actually have to cut the last 20, 25 feet of Carlton Ave, you might have to repitch that section of the street. You'd have to have spot shots to see exactly
Yeah,
what's
and
happening there.
if he's
But you may
engineering
have
it,
to cut it and then repave that last 20 feet to pitch your property while you're repaving the rest of your roadway.
Well, that shouldn't be too much of a problem.
No, it's just somehow,
No,
when they
no,
did that, they
engineering,
repitched it
Yeah, but
to send it to you
by cutting
when
off
it used
the
to go a
drainage,
different
and
way.
then, you know, you save a lot of money there, and the swells are much less.
all right,
expensive.
we do have, yes, I'm sorry, before I get to this letter, did you have something to add?
Well, my name is Barbara Crowley, and my husband Dale and I, we own property on the other side of the street. We're on 242 South Street East. So,
And what are your intentions?
244, you're on the other side of the street.
They start way up on South Street,
Come all the way down.
Oh, wow.
we own it all.
All the way down?
All the way back to Carlton.
So you'd
Okay.
actually see a good benefit from this.
Right. So that's just why I'm here.
That's a yes vote.
Okay, so we do have a letter. I would like to read that. Maureen gave you a copy. This came in, one of the neighbors couldn't be present.
Here it goes.
Yeah,
Good luck.
Robert Beatrice.
I should have got the other glasses. Oh, I can read this. To the town of Raynham, I, Robert A. Beatrice of 62 Raymond Ave, am opposed to the building of houses on Carlton Ave in Raynham. I have a few concerns. First off is my children, as we bought the last house on a dead-end street. Let me see if I know where he is. Beatrice, so he's the house on the left of, as we bought the last house on a dead-end street for the safety of minimal traffic. Secondly was the fact that Raymond Ave is a private way. I think it's actually a town way, isn't it? I think Raymond Ave is actually a town way. Is a private way, which meant that it couldn't be added onto. Third would be the fact that as far the last that, for the last 9+ years, I have maintained the grass portion of Carlton Ave. As I was told, this being a paper street meant that down up to, that I owned up to the center line of this would be street. Now here comes a American Roofing bulldozing out the trees that I was told are on my portion of Carlton Ave. I understand they needed to provide soil samples to the town, but it seems a bit overkill to bulldoze out a street worth of someone's property to take a soil sample. A American bought this property and has a right to clear it, but that doesn't give them the right to take anything down that is on my property or the property of my neighbor, Mrs. Loretto, 70 Raymond Ave. I apologize for my absence at this meeting, but due to prior commitments, I wouldn't be available, but I'm hoping this letter serves as my objection. And just quickly, my thoughts on this is, I think Ed would have to address this. The traffic, what are you going to have 2 more houses? That's not going to have any kind of impact, and actually provides a turnaround, which would help. As far as rights to the road and improvements, I think that's something that Attorney Brennan would have to address. You know, whether...
I mean, I understand his concerns, but my client owns the property. It is a paper street. They do own to the center line, as my clients own to the center line. Each ownership is subject to the rights of the other owners to improve the paper street, and that's what we're doing. So he's correct about the middle ownership to the middle of the roadway, but that doesn't give him any legal right to prevent another owner fronting on the street from developing the street. All the ownership to the center line is subject to the right to develop by all the other owners, and meaning improve utilities, installation, roadways, etc. So, I'm sure he would prefer that nothing happened down there, but just as he has property rights in his property, my client has property rights in his 2.21 acres and has the right to develop it.
Okay, thank you for reading that, Chris. Anything else? Rick, any other questions, comments?
I can show you pictures of how my husband took care of Carlton Street. He did 30 years, and he took care of it.
Okay, well, the taking care of Carlton Street, I'm sure he did.
Do you want to see pictures?
That's not going to be necessary. I think the ownership issue of it, you front about 160 feet on Carlton Street, so you basically are in the same position your other neighbor across the street. And I think Mr. Brennan just stated the legal part of ownership of Carlton Street. So maintaining it and cutting it and mowing it and doing all that stuff, I'm sure that he did. I think the owner of the piece of property next door to you still has the right to get to his property. I think your question or concerns, I think it would be this board's concern, is your water issues, and I think we can take care of, I think they can take care of it just by doing some engineering. If they go out there and actually take the engineering data from the front yard, the front side area, before it enters your property, and I think Mr. Gallagher had, a good point by bringing it further down Carlton Street. So it's not running just straight into your property and then running it down the property line.
I mean, now you said the owners are gonna maintain the street.
Like in the wintertime, when the snow comes down and then they have to plow the snow out of the way, they gonna plow it so that it's not gonna fill the way the water flows down the street?
Well, what this board can do when we have an approval, if something is being presented as a private way, part of the stipulation, we would require that the deeds to those two house lots, it would be listed right in there that they're assuming the rights to maintaining Carlton Street, which is plowing, repairing pavement, anything else. So that would be part, and that can be part of the decision that we make on where's the snow going. It's no different than any other subdivision that we do in the town or a private parking lot we do in the town. We require, areas for them to put the snow. So that's something that we'll look at. Obviously, if we're looking at this as a water concern in your front yard, we don't want the snow to be sitting there, because I don't care how much of a swell you have. If you have a 6-foot pile of snow, it's going to be melting and going in your yard. In the wintertime is the worst time to have water in the basement. Not that any time is good, but the wintertime is, the ground's frozen, it's not going to absorb into the ground, and that's usually, when you're really going to have the issues.
Another thing you might look into is the disbursement of wildlife in the area too. She has deer, wild turkeys, and a number of other animals that reside in and around the property. Where are they going to go from there? Are they going to go out on South Street?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Well, I think for, the nature that is currently living there, the good thing is you have quite a few acres surrounding this entire your area and all around you, that's all wetlands. So I don't think there's gonna be an issue of where the wildlife's gonna go. I think there's enough area all in the back that has plenty of room that is gonna and will never be built on. So, with that said, Is there anything else from anybody?
No, just that,
I'm sorry, is there a vote that we can say no, we don't want that?
Not tonight, because we're requiring some additional information for Carlton Street, or for the entrance of Carlton Street, or the end of Raymond
yeah,
Ave.
he's gonna actually have to do like a micro topo in there to see what's happening and pitch it accordingly.
And he's
It's
gonna
not a
do-
big deal, it's just, he's gonna.
And
I
re-slope.
think what they did is probably regraded this road and recrowned however they did it and directed the water towards your house, because it probably used to flow towards Carlton Street and around you. And
And the
when
new
they
plans-
redid it, that happened, and, you know, Larry will figure it out, just tell him, have Raymond Ave directed away from her house and down that road. It's not, you get so much pitch, it's not a big deal.
But also, you're gonna eliminate
Yeah, and then do-
the end.
And show the
You're
other
gonna eliminate
swales.
that, and you're gonna show the swales between the two houses, because that's gonna be important for her piece of property.
Yeah, show that it
Well,
works.
that's a good point. The swale between Mrs. Loretto and this first lot, does that swale straddle the property line? Or
No,
They want that swale on their property? Or
no,
on
beyond
lot
yours,
two?
beyond yours. I mean, it's, you pitch that way anyway, he's almost showing a swale right there, it's just, it's pretty.
Yeah, and you're creating a swale, so the water is running off of Carlton Street. So by improving the end of Raymond Avenue and having some more, diverting the water basically from running straight forward to that swale.
No,
He's already showing one between this property line. He's pretty much, already showing one between that.
The
Yeah.
second lot line.
So in other words, all his little Vs that you show, they'll disappear when they hit lot 60-1, and his grades,
now the storm, the drainage system as designed here has some certain water quality attributes. I know this isn't the board that can answer the question, but we are also going to have a Conservation Commission filing required, and I would have to give some consideration as to whether or not those swales are going to be acceptable at the next board.
I understand that.
I don't know.
I
I don't
think-
know the answer to that. I think as designed, it would be acceptable to Concom because it addresses all of their issues.
When are you going to Concom?
Oh, we haven't filed yet.
I think Azu would agree, he's a guy that goes by the rules, he's a pretty straight shooter, and he'd agree that it's not required, as it's a two-lot subdivision, and it's, 5 lots or less, or however it reads, that you're okay.
I think they like
And
swales
I could touch base with him, and if you like, but I
They
think
may,
it's,
because they are maintenance-free.
yeah, I mean, you're creating a maintenance nightmare here, but,
When did you want to continue this to?
In 1 minute, I think it's, if they looked at it, they do like swales. I mean, that's just that's a common drainage conservation. You would think they would rather see that than puddling all the water at one spot. But one step further, what's going to be best for the town, even though this is going to be a private way, if by diverting the water between these lots and swales versus having a riprap drainage system at the end, if that starts backing up and having issues, those people are paying taxes, who are they gonna call? They're gonna call the highway department. And then highway department's gonna be forced to go down there and do something when it's not even our problem. It's easy to say, no, they won't be forced, but we have that issue now when we have private ways and we have maintenance issues. They go to the selectmen and the selectmen are doing their job and they say, hey, we have,
So if I understand the suggested design correctly, essentially it would be a curbing up to the swale, and then the curbing will actually channel the water?
well, I don't think it's, like I said, curbing.
you could do a curbing, but you could do the,
How are you gonna get the water from the end of Raymond over to lot number?
you may have to recut some of that pavement and regrade it. It doesn't give you enough information to show what's happening out there, but if the water is running directly to house number 73, it's obviously not making that corner, and you're gonna have to find a way to engineer it to make that corner.
proposed?
In other words, what I think might have
happened.
happened is they might have crowned the road when it used to pitch over that way and directed the water towards this woman's house.
Would the town have to have prepared any as-bills or anything when they did?
No, they did a water line and simply, bit it out through a water line in and then overlaid it gutter to gutter, just like you're doing a sewer job. So it wasn't a real detailed plan.
Asking a good question. We talked about how we're gonna get it around that curve, but then we have 160 feet straight with the, you want the water to go in one direction, and the topo here is showing it still running down into House 73's yard. So we need to do something to make it go another 160 feet before it hits the swale.
Why does all the water have to go over to lot number 1? If it used to make the corner and disperse out onto number 73, why can't some of it still do that? Why does lot number 1 have to take it all?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's such a drop that it doesn't really matter. But I understand what you're saying. You wouldn't,
Then we're taking everything shooting down Raymond,
Yeah.
make a 90, and then get it all over to lot number
Yep.
1.
Yep.
I think some of it, we could try to solve the problem.
could go on either side of the lot line.
For
I see
Raymond
what you're saying.
Avenue doesn't dump into 73.
Yeah.
But if it used to go that way, I mean,
Yeah.
I would ask the engineer to try to make it go the way it used to go, and not necessarily dump it all on lot
Yeah.
number 1, that's all.
Yeah, it probably, a lot of it cheated across 73's lot.
Well, you have 100, and plus you have 160 feet, so
Right.
I agree.
A lot of
Sure,
water
A lot of
could
that
be-
water
Right.
was dissipated through that 160 feet. And why carry all that, that additional 160 feet to divert it somewhere?
Yeah.
But our goal is to, that person didn't have water. If we're gonna go with swales between houses, not do catch basins, not do drainage, because if we required you to do catch basin, we could have a catch basin right at the end of her house, tie it right in, and now you run it right down the end of the street, and her issue would be done. But, if you wanna keep your drainage the way it is, I think, that's gonna be illegal, there's gotta be something legally that is in concrete, that those people that buy those houses and they want to maintain, well, they have to maintain. It's not the town's issue. How do you do it? I know, we've gone over this before.
Put it in a deed, and you tell them they have to, and when they don't, what do you do about it?
Well, I think,
That's what
you
I
understand
said.
the concept of what we want to get, and
Right.
Larry is gonna have to do some engineering to make that happen, and then bring back a revised plan.
All right, if we're not gonna make it go the 160 feet, which I agree, we just need to get it away from the
Away
house,
from the
so
house.
40 or 50 feet.
Yeah.
Do we make them put a curbing in, or what do we do to?
He might have to rework some of the pavement grades.
That's gonna have to
Where
be,
you'd end up
the
having
engineer's gonna have to.
like a berm in front of the driveway type of thing, but you'd have to rework it.
And I think that'll be something that they're gonna have to bring back in front of us and tell us what they
You also want to
recommend.
do in such a way that the first time the snowplow comes through, it doesn't destroy it.
Oh, exactly. That's why grading has to be done no matter what. Grading and curbing, maybe both of them, but definitely grading's gonna have to be done. And again, like I mentioned, if you wanna continue and have that, the way it's all set up, you wanna put a catch basin down at the end of Raymond Ave, right at the beginning of Carlton Street,
All you'd have to
And-
do is how he's turning this
and
corner
run
with his
it down?
pavement, and turn the corner here, you'd create a gutter along the driveway and run it, just like you would on a regular road.
Right.
You'd create a gutter, so they might have a little lip to go into their driveway of 3 inches, but you create the gutter and send it, and you could create the gutter and end the gutter, so it starts sheeting off here.
Plus the other.
It's easy to do.
Yeah, and the other thing too, for plowing in the wintertime, even though this is private, I think this is gonna be an advantage for the highway department to have this, because they're gonna be able to come around the corner and push all the snow to the end. It's gonna be paved. They never would have pushed snow down Carlton Street before, because it was grass. They'd be afraid they're gonna get stuck. But when they're plowing, I bet you that where else are they gonna put all the snow? I mean, Raymond Ave is huge.
They actually do, when they come around the corner, they do
Push it into Carlton.
They try to push it.
Well,
So, and that's grass, so I bet you they're gonna keep going now because it's pavement and get all of the snow, so all that snow is not sitting at the very end, at the beginning of Carlton and at the end of Raymond.
Like it used to be.
We have to change our take.
Okay, so
Didn't you hear us, Mr.
I did, but I forgot.
Attorney Brennan?
2 seconds ago.
Okay, so, I think, yes, you started saying something for
Just
the...
so I think I understand the concept. I'll talk with Mr. Silver about how to accomplish it. It seems like it's going to be far less engineering than what we had to go through to get to here. So I would ask the board to put us on at your next regular meeting for a further public hearing and give us an opportunity to address this issue through swales. I just want to make sure I understand that the board would be comfortable with eliminating that detention basin and the country swale and everything on the lot fronts in return for the swales between the lot lines.
And
And addressing as best we can. I don't know
Well, look at it. I
if
mean,
we can solve the entire problem about Raymond Avenue. I mean, if the
No.
town created that, we'll do our best to solve it. But I don't know what's
When
involved.
you're gonna have a super
with that.
elevated road, and see this corner here?
Yep.
You can have a gutter come right around that corner in front of the driveway and direct the water that way. And you might have to cut, you got plenty of grade to make it work.
Okay.
He'll,
All right.
I'm confident that, Silver.
So putting on the next, the planning board next meeting is September 18th. And, I'm sorry.
September 18th. That's the next meeting? Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah, I forgot what date today. Oh, man. Time is flying.
Okay, so September 18th. Now, I
What time, 6:15?
do believe I have an appointment, a meeting somewhere else on that evening, which is the once in a long time that I have conflict, so I don't think I'm gonna be here, so they're gonna need 4 of members, so this doesn't get postponed again. So if,
You don't want a straw poll, is that what you're saying?
well, I just wanna make sure that it doesn't,
Oh, I think so,
I
yeah.
just wanna make sure, I'll let you know now that
I mean, if we're telling them to make all these changes, we're obviously not.
I-
More than 2 weeks.
I do too.
I don't have it myself. I
He's
don't have
done a lot of
problem.
work out there already. I don't think there's gonna be a ton of field work, except for the end of
Raymond
Raymond
Ave.
Avenue. The rest of it he's got.
Yeah, no, I think that's all he's gonna have to do is take a level and do some spot shots and see what's happening
9:18,
with like a micro
6:15.
topo.
6:15.
Time to act is extended to January 30th, 2015.
So we're gonna continue this until 6:15 on September 18th. So September 18th at 6:15 is when it's gonna be continued. Okay?
What's the contact?
Time to act is January,
What was it, though?
October 16th.
Nothing, yeah. Nothing can, whatever went on with Carlton Street before could go on with Carlton Street now. They can't go building houses or putting roads in or anything like that. So until September 18th, nothing. All right? Okay, so, very good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have zoning protection bylaw amendments.
Yes, at the last meeting, we didn't act on this because we didn't have a full board. This is, you have a handout in your packet, a memo dated August 25th to Dan from myself. This is something Burke had brought up and wanted me to look into, and so I drafted up a draft zoning bylaw amendment. Burke was interested in potentially amending the zoning bylaws to give non-conforming lots in the future zoning protection. So when somebody comes forward, receives an A&R or subdivision approval, right now, Mass General Law protects the dimensional regulations on that lot for 8 years. However, sometimes the subdivision isn't completed in 8 years.
Actually, not on an A&R.
Not an A&R, but on an A&R, it's not protected.
A&R, you can do an A&R and the zoning can change in any day and you should out of luck.
There you go. So for subdivisions, it's 8 years, right. A&Rs, obviously, there's no protection. So even more so, Burke was interested in doing something where if somebody gets a subdivision approval or an A&R approval, in only the residence A and B districts for a single or two-family use, they would be afforded protection on the dimensional regulations in perpetuity. So whatever dimensional regulations were in place when they got approved, those would remain effective whenever they were to actually act on those lots and actually construct on those lots.
We've discussed this for years, wanting to get this done.
Yeah.
And to take it a step further, in Falmouth, it's similar way you know, like, I'm in a neighborhood with all non-conforming lots, but if they kept a separate tax bill on those lots, they're considered legit lots. And so you might want to take a look at how they word it on theirs. Easton has something similar. You know, of course, they say you have to have the minimum 50 by 100 or whatever, but it's if you had it when zoning came in, so these, because there's a lot of people that have these lots there under the impression they're getting two tax bills, they got lots, they're gonna save it for their kids someday, and then they go to build on it, and it's, they're out of luck.
That's exactly what.
But that's what we,
Burke's comment
yeah, that was
last
kind of
time.
what we were talking about before, and this has been a long time coming, actually. We've discussed this for,
Does, we need any time period that has to be recorded in the Bristol County Registry of Deeds within so many days of approval, or just?
oh, that's 6
being
months.
recorded?
Yeah, they automatically.
Yeah, they automatically have to do it within 6 months, or
And
get
subdivision?
re-endorsed.
Same thing?
Subdivision, A&R, same thing.
Oh, okay. State law?
So I think we
Remember,
should keep that
you
so
guys
it
did that
stays
to me, and I
simple.
had to bring in my wedding picture. Don't need that anymore.
Is that state law?
I think it is.
Okay.
So.
Well, then looks good to me.
Basically what you were referring to, Chris, the example that Burke had pointed out to me was Waltham has something similar to this, although, so we based it off that, but it's not exactly what we were looking to accomplish. And so what this would do, you mentioned the whole, as long as it has a minimum of X amount feet
Which
of
is-
frontage. Waltham does that, but what
Because that's state law.
what's that?
That's state law.
Okay.
It says when they do it in subdivision control law, they say, but in those instances, it shall the lot be less than this certain size.
So that automatically offers us a certain amount of protection no matter what.
Yeah.
So what all this would do is it's worded the minimum frontage area and front side and rear yard setback requirements listed in Article 5.1 shall not apply to any single or two-family residential buildable lots in the Residence A or Residence B districts that is shown on a deed, on an approved subdivision plan or on a plan bearing the endorsement of pool not required under subdivision control law, said deed or plan being duly signed and recorded at the Bristol County Registry of Deeds that conformed to the existing zoning requirements at the time of approval. So basically, all it says is they have to conform at the time of approval,
Right.
but then their dimensionals are locked in perpetuity.
Yeah. And I mean, that makes sense,
As opposed
because
to the
you
8 years.
you
8
have,
years, or in the case of an A&R.
well, you've had subdivisions where people have sat on them for a while, and then they get penalized for not
Yes.
building.
Well, you had Darrington Drive, instead of rushing out and just building out the whole thing, it
Yeah.
was one house a year for 20 years, well, they had to come in for a variance every time.
Well, I mean, George Bamilla, Pine Tree Lane, I was doing a lot of work for him at the time before I was on the planning board, and I said, geez, George, your 8 years is up next October. He said, what are you talking about? He said, it's my retirement. Like George needed it, but that was gonna be his retirement. He was saving them lots. Peter was the only house in the whole neighborhood. And I said, you gotta get these things sold. You got about 9 months to do it. So he had to get rid of them all and built up the whole neighborhood when he could have just sat and did it.
And
as he felt like.
added a house every once in a
Yeah.
while instead.
So do you need us to,
Yeah, what I'm requesting is if the board is satisfied with the way it is drafted and the language as it's drafted, I would ask the board to take a vote to sponsor this at the upcoming fall town meeting for approval.
Russ, you had some questions last time?
Yeah, I'm just reading through it again here, and, I get what you're doing. I just want to make sure you're not leaving it too wide open for
Right.
unintended consequences.
Exactly. I think, and then reading through it again, I think at the end, that conform to the existing zoning requirements at the time of approval. That's the key there. It has to conform when they are
A lot of
approved.
towns, I've seen them say that they said, but in no case can the lot be less than have less than 50 feet in front of 5,000
But
square
if
feet.
it's
I don't know
a-
if that even applies.
But if it's already state
If
law,
it's-
then we don't really need to enumerate that.
Yeah, a lot of things, so anything that's
The only
done-
place it would apply was maybe Sandy Hill or something.
I
But I think they're
don't-
all oversized.
I mean, you think, when did we require lots to be 100 foot by 100 foot back?
56, only
In the-
56
Yeah,
is when
like in the
zoning came in.
50s or something,
Yeah.
so.
56, yeah.
I think it's.
That wasn't even a thought then.
Because if
Henry, you're all
Henry was
set
in
with
high
it?
school.
I'm all set with it.
Chris, you're all set with
Yeah,
it?
no, this has been a long time coming. We've
Russ,
talked about
any-
it for a long time, and I'm glad it's happening.
Yeah, I guess so.
We already, the deadline to submit these is the 19th, so we have a couple weeks. If something comes up in the meantime, we have another meeting the night before that deadline. If somebody notices something or has an idea to tweak it, we have time to do it.
Okay, so, go ahead.
Just a matter of wording here. On the sentence where it says, buildable lots in the Residence A and Residence B district that is shown on a deed. So if it's just a lot on a deed, or does it have to also be on an approved plan? Because when I read that, I'm like, that is shown on a deed, on an approved
On
subdivision
an
or
approved
plan.
subdivision plan.
So if grandma owned a lot in 1940 that's still in her name,
Maybe it's instead of saying.
So you know why it's written that way and where that came from? Because Section 81Y says that to create a lot, you have to have a plan. But, and I've been victim of this before, but if you don't have a plan and convey it by deed, in other words, you can take a square lot and just draw a deed and describe part of it, even though there's no plan, and convey it. If that conveyance goes over a year without anyone complaining about it or filing a thing,
It becomes a lot.
it becomes a lot. Actually, it becomes one the minute you deed it, but the year goes by, you're in the clear. So in other words, you can deed out a plan without ever coming in front of the planning board. But in this case, it would have to meet zoning at the time.
What if we take out the comma after deed?
because my concern there is, if that deed was 1950,
Yeah, I know what
there
you're
is
saying.
no
Yeah, no.
zoning.
So if you take out the
So-
comma,
Well, if that deed was 1950, and the person doesn't own any lots around it, it's grandfathered anyway,
And you've just
without
given them.
being shown on a plan.
Mm.
Oh,
You
no,
would
it's
have to-
already, it's already.
But they would have
Yeah,
to go
but-
for variance.
Well, this
What?
says
No.
here that you don't have to apply
well, if we
conformity
take
of
the,
minimum frontage,
what if we
area,
take the
side,
comma
rear.
out?
Right?
Just
that's-
take the
that was
comma
my
out.
concern. Yeah, just make it clear that it's gotta be
So, but
on a
as
plan
shown on a
also.
deed, on an approved
Oh,
subdivision.
no,
plan.
but if you finish the last sentence, it says said deed or plan being duly signed and recorded in Bristol County, that conformed to the existing zoning requirements at the time of approval. So if someone drew a deed without coming to the planning board, and it doesn't conform to the zoning at that time, then the lot's no
It
good.
doesn't qualify.
Because, yeah, I know what
But
you're
if it
thinking,
was
someone could do it.
1950, it conformed to zoning because there wasn't,
Yeah.
right? And now are you
But it's a
telling them?
grandfathered lot.
That's called that's called the.
Well,
lot
I get that,
provision, yeah.
but at the top area, you're saying non-conforming lots, the minimum frontage area, front, side, and rear setbacks shall not apply. So you've just given them, you don't have to conform to any setbacks if
No,
you
they-
have a lot that was,
They had to conform to whatever the standards were when they got approved.
yeah, but isn't the purpose of this to deal with, approval not required and plans? So it's not, this is not meant to deal with individual deeds.
Right.
So if we take the comma out, does it hurt us?
right, that's all I wanna,
So basically, it would read, in residence A and B districts that is shown on a deed on an approved subdivision plan. So it's not an either or, it has to be a deed
Oh.
on an approved subdivision
Right.
plan
That
or
was
an
my
A&R. So
concern.
taking out that comma,
Well, what, do we want to just take out on a deed?
No, because you're gonna have deeds, and plans that never got recorded.
Okay.
It's very common that you'll have a subdivision plan, you might have 5 houses, they're all built,
And if we just
and
take
they're
out
on a
the comma, like
non-recorded
Henry
plan.
said, it's not gonna.
So I think you
it's
leave
not,
it
it
the way it
turns it
is.
from an or thing into an
Yeah,
and thing.
leave it-
That's not gonna
There you
matter.
go.
Yeah, leave it the way it
Very
is.
simple solution.
okay, or.
Okay. Very good,
Yeah.
Henry, thank you. Anything,
Do we have to motion to,
yeah,
Yes.
motion to sponsor that?
I make a motion that we sponsor the amendment to Article 6.2, non-conforming use and structure as set forth on the memorandum from the Director of Planning and Development dated August 25, 2014.
second it.
With the proposed amendment.
Yeah.
Taking out that comma.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good, thank you, Russ.
That's not taking out the comma.
We are taking out the comma.
No, we're taking,
No.
To make it an and thing, a deed on approved subdivision plan.
You don't want to do that. That's what I'm saying is,
On a deed or on an approved subdivision.
yeah, on a deed or on an approved subdivision plan.
Oh, okay, so take out the comma and put or?
Mhm.
Okay.
Or,
Yeah.
or.
And.
Well, you don't want it to have to be both, because there's lots that are out there that exist that were conveyed, and sometimes the plans never got recorded. A lot of times, when doing deed research, sometimes say in Taunton that, you know, pre-fire, I don't know how they are now, but they had an awesome library of plans. And a lot of these plans that you'd find weren't ever recorded, even
Right,
though the
so-
lots were deeded out.
right, so how are we
So they're
gonna-
still grandfathered.
we made a motion, we voted on it, so let's make sure we.
On a deed or on an approved subdivision plan.
Or on a plan bearing the
Okay.
endorsement. Okay.
You have that?
Yep.
On a deed, or on a.
An approved subdivision plan or on a plan bearing the endorsement, approval not required.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, you may never run
All in
into a
favor?
situation where it exists.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Lastly, at the last meeting, I made a presentation, and there was some discussion, about, a gateway mixed-use overlay district. Obviously, this is something that's been worked on for a while. Just to quickly review, when I first started, this was one of the first things that came across my desk. There was a land use plan done in 2012 by Serpent that we got a $10,000 grant to do. However, the committee, the Route 138 steering committee that was formed to do this land use plan was inactive for a period of about 14 months before, from the end of the previous town planner's tenure to my hiring. So we picked up where we had left off, and this committee met monthly for about 5 or 6 months, starting last fall through March, April of this year. We made some progress. However, we came to a point where we realized what we were doing was not really consistent with the intent of the land use plan and the previous committee's work. Over a few 3 to 4 months, I made contact with all of the homeowners, or tried to, with all the homeowners that own homes within the residential D portion of that corridor, and found that the vast majority supported an overlay district consistent with the original intent of that committee and that land use study. So I tweaked the bylaw, and that's what is before you, but with the proviso that this bylaw would basically open up that corridor to expanded uses that are allowed not only in the existing zoning districts of residential D, residential A, and designated development, but also a couple other zoning districts such as the business district and the office development district. I believe the business district is not enumerated in this permitted uses because I believe that the uses in the other articles mentioned encompass uses that are included in the business district. So, we're not going, this doesn't propose to amend the dimensional regulations of the underlying zoning districts at this point, because we felt that was, maybe biting off a little bit more than we can chew at this point in time. And it also adds design guidelines in addition to what the board already has in place within our site plan approval regulations.
Yeah, we're not adding any district that's not already there.
Right.
I think that's the key.
Yes.
We're opening it up because Route 138 has all of these current zones now. All we're doing is we're opening it up where you can have mixed use in any of the area.
Because of straight rezoning, if we do an overlay district, we do have more control over what types of businesses go in there and their design. You know, and we have certain prohibited uses. Residential subdivisions would not be allowed along this corridor. Motor vehicle sales or restaurants or dining facilities with drive-throughs, because that was one of the discussions that was held with the committee, was that the concern was protecting the residential neighborhoods behind the properties that front on 138. But recognizing that there is a difference between a Dunkin' Donuts or a fast food chain with a drive-through and a bank or a pharmacy with a drive-through, it's a compromise. It's like, okay, you know, a Taco Bell or a Dunkin' Donuts can't go in with a drive-through. However, a Bristol County Savings Bank or something along those lines, or a CVS or a Walgreens could potentially have a drive-through, because the peak hours, the hours of operation, the volume of vehicles that come through there are just apples and oranges. It's not the same. So what I would like to request from the board, if you're prepared to do so at this point, is to, again, vote to agree to sponsor this as an article at the upcoming fall town meeting.
And where's
I
it
don't,
going
I'd have to
on
look into this
138?
more.
From where to where?
What's that, Henry?
Where to where on 138?
It's basically from I-495 to the Taunton City line for only properties that front on Route 138.
And what's,
And what's
the
north?
gist of this thing is that it's all the uses that are already allowed, but and no new, like, what's changing?
What happens is you have residential here.
Yeah.
Residential,
You have
your business here, you have business development district here. It's so chopped up in trying to get Route 138 rezoned as business is next to impossible. So by doing an overlay district, allowing, if you have business, having an overlay district, I can do a business in the residential A section. He went to.
So you're kind of rezoning all Broadway business.
It's not a rezoning because.
Well,
we're
it's-
not-
No, I know, technically it
Right.
isn't, but it's a way to backdoor it,
Exactly.
in effect. So
But
you're
we're
basically,
not-
you're rezoning it business without rezoning it business.
But the individual dimensional regulations of those zoning
No, I
districts.
understand
yeah,
that, but
will
what's
stay in
allowed
place.
in 411, 412,
Well, I'll
414,
tell you what
449,
districts those are
410,
right now. Hold
74?
on. I'll tell you what zoning districts those
Isn't
are.
this mostly residential district D?
Not
now?
mostly, no.
No.
From Taunton to
From-
495?
No, because there's some
Basically,
industrial
From Britton Street to south of King Philip Street.
You have a small portion that's D.
is D, and then what's the others?
Business is to the north, there's some business to the south, and then
And
at the
the
very
others
south,
that-
where the Walmart is in that
That
area,
new
is
zone they
designated
did,
development.
that designated development.
So, Article 411 is residential A. Permitted uses, 412 is residential B permitted uses. 414 is residential D permitted uses. 4.9 is office development district permitted uses, and 4.10 is designated development permitted uses. And then Article 7.4 is simply all the special permitted uses within those districts. So we're not changing the mechanism of approval. Anything that's permitted by right is permitted by right under this. Anything special permit would still be a special permit with the zoning board of appeals.
So what is it doing again? I'm missing something.
It's allowing, if what you're saying, it's basically taking residential D and allowing a bunch of other uses. Like, is it allowing business uses?
Yes.
So basically, it's taking residential D and making it a business zone.
But not just residential D.
Yeah, making it right throughout the board.
Throughout, if I wanted to do in the business development district, which was adopted when
you
they
could-
tried stopping Walmart.
So it's a
So
rezoning
you
without
could put-
calling it a
You could put
rezoning.
strip malls in now
What's
anywhere?
that?
You could put a strip mall in there?
Well, it depends on the lots, because right now in the thing is the sizes and the depth of lots, it's partially self-regulating. Because if CVS wanted to move out of that Market Basket Plaza, which they will eventually, under this, those lots within the residential D district, the amount of frontage and the depth and the size of those lots, most likely, there wouldn't be a lot that could accommodate a CVS anyway.
Yeah, you buy a couple of them.
CVS, let's
Buy a
talk
couple of
about,
them.
I forget who represented them, when they wanted to rezone the lot, the large lot that
Across
allegedly-
the street.
Across the street. Now, what you're telling me is, with this, they would not even have to rezone. They could just
Yeah.
put it in there.
In other words, what's the
I'm not
dimension
sure
of
I
your
want to
gate?
do that.
Yeah, I'm not into this one.
I'm not sure I
The
like it.
Gateway Mixed-Use Overlay District, is there a map that defines that?
Yeah, actually, I presented it at the last meeting. I do have a map that shows that.
I mean, that would help to see, because we don't even know what we're talking about here, not being
Yeah,
able
that's
to
what
see what, we're
it's-
basically in effect rezoning something by, we're not rezoning it, we're just putting an overlay district, which is a rezone. It's an overlay
It's a
district, it's just a
rezone.
nice way to say
As an
zone
example.
line.
Well,
The
the
CVS
difference is
And,
a rezoning would change the setbacks and the.
That's
frontage
semantics,
requirements.
but I mean,
Maybe
that's
what to-
semantics, but it's,
Maybe what to do is, you have the, we spent about a year with Serpent. You have that report.
Mhm.
I think you should pass that report out, get a copy to each member, so they can see what the Route 138 Study Committee, what they did
Right.
from the beginning with the grant money.
Well, we know the
And-
zoning, because we got beautiful maps from John and Lucy, brought one to my office. Did you all get your big colored zoning map?
Yeah, no, I know, but that was what they were recommending, and what this is, it's a little different. So you may feel that what Serpent originally we did back on the Route 138 Study Committee, you might want to modify this a little bit where you don't want to overlay the whole thing. And that's why if you read what Serpent came up with, you might have,
And why are we stopping at 495? Instead of going all the way up to
That was
Easton?
that was the extent of the study.
What
If
was-
it's so good for the lower part of 138, why isn't it good for the upper part of
well,
138?
number one, I think the biggest thing is
There's no residential
Henry,
zoning north of 495.
this has been something, trying to get anything done on 138 has been.
Oh, I know.
Has been tremendous over all of these years, 20 years.
So
And
you're
and then
doing-
some, so to try to change the zoning and have a zoning change and extend it beyond, that's why the overlay district kind of works, because nobody's going to lose out on what they currently are operating their business. You're not going to have, you have 4 different zoning requirements along that one little stretch. So if you change it to business, now you're making one lot non-conforming.
but I think Henry's question though, could the CVS go there now with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the
Without a
people that
hearing.
just voted down that whole
Yeah.
thing,
Well, they'll have to go to the town meeting
they'd
and,
have to go and this
Right.
would just,
So that-
this
that's
doesn't
my-
pass the
that's
smell
my
test to me.
objection it. Just
So-
for one example.
It's, you can call it what you want, but it's a rezoning. It's a zoning article, it's a rezoning.
well,
It's
it's
a-
either
it's
that or it's gonna be, you put in for changing 138 to business.
Or you just leave it alone.
Well, you can
Well,
stick
because
your head in a
it's-
hole too and not wanna do anything on 138
Well,
because
after talk,
people are complaining.
36 residential homeowners. I talked to 32 of them. 28 of them overwhelmingly support some kind of change to the zoning of their property because their property values are going down steadily over time. They're concerned
What property values are going down?
along Route 138.
I don't believe that for 1 second. You show me 3 examples. No
And
property's gone down in Raynham on 138.
Well, a residential house?
He's
I
saying
would
that
say
people
that.
believe
Yep.
that their property values are going down.
And they're very concerned that in the future, as this corridor continues to evolve, especially if the commuter rail gets approved, they're I've talked to at least half a dozen who said that their properties will go on the market the day after that commuter rail gets approved. And they're concerned that as a residential property, their land will have less.
Would you wanna move on to Route
That
138?
computer rail, they've been working on since I was like 3.
Properties and rezone.
I mean, come on.
And rezone them.
And
Yeah.
rezone.
And rezone them. Now, if somebody told you that they're still gonna be residential 20 years from now, you wouldn't pay 2 cents for one.
On the resident, on District D, I think District D works out well.
Yeah,
I think it works out
On
well,
D,
whether.
we
okay.
did that 10 years ago and we had one business. We tried doing exactly what
We
we're
had the
trying to do
doctor's
again.
office.
couple doctor offices.
Had a few doctor's
One, a
offices.
foot guy, he's not even there
No,
anymore.
Kenny Berlin.
Kenny Berlin.
You had the guy that liked touching my feet, what was his name?
Yeah,
Malaysian
he's not
dude.
there. Who's Berlin?
He's a pediatrician. Across
Pediatrician.
from,
We have one,
China
we have,
Garden.
we have
And then-
one, the
I don't
family
think
medical,
that's,
it.
I don't think
That's in
that's
the residential
residential D.
district.
Residential D
Yeah, he
is
said
like
it was.
First
There's
Street
one.
too.
Yeah.
That family with the light blue sign, that family practice, that's the only
Yeah,
one
that's
that's
the guy
within
that
the
liked
residential
looking at the
district.
feet.
And I've talked to many, many people who are of the belief that, over time, the residential component of Route 138 is gonna get less and less.
Well,
All of the
I
owners-
agree.
all
So
the
why,
owners-
if those 32 people would come out to a town meeting, they could outvote the First Street people who
But
aren't
nobody-
even
but
affected.
Nobody's ever talked to them. Nobody's ever solicited their opinion. And my idea eventually, if the planning board is not ready to sponsor this for this fall town meeting, we can gear this up towards the spring, and we could potentially hold a public workshop and bring these people out.
including First Street.
Well, originally, the zoning articles are not supposed to be on the special town meetings. I mean, they're all supposed to be on the annuals. And
Well,
somehow
But they allow us
that's
to
weird.
put them on the special.
What's supposed to and what?
Yeah, but it's,
I just think,
typically, they've been on
a
supposedly.
change of this type, when you want this on a meeting in
In a
how many
month?
months, in a month or so?
No, I just,
I think it's
just
premature.
bring it
Yeah.
before
I,
the board.
I looked at it when I got in today, and, I think a lot of it's good. I'm not sure the implementation is what is best for the town right now.
Mhm.
I think we should look at this for a month or two before you throw it on the warrant.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
And I hate to admit this, but I agree with Henry.
There are worse things that you're going to have to.
So I would suggest that the information, because this is something that has been going on for years with these studies on 138. It's not something that just came up. So I would suggest that pass along the books from
And I
from
can
the
do, I
Serpent.
can do a new presentation for the members who weren't here at the last meeting. I can do the presentation again with the visuals, with the map that I have. And we
And
can-
out of it, maybe, I think, my opinion, something should be done on 138. I think it's,
The steering committee in 2012 unanimously voted that this is the first priority along that corridor, to establish an overlay district from 495 down
and
to-
representatives of the First Street group
Were on that
were on
committee,
that steering
and they
committee.
remain on that steering
Right,
committee.
so, to not
I mean,
go
this is-
forward,
Does this open it up to, box stores and stuff like that?
That, actually, if you look, that's one, actually, it was a prohibited use, but like I said, the lots.
Prohibited use now.
No.
I
But
think-
again, a Bob's store is not gonna go in that residential D district. That's,
I
the
think-
lot, the size of the lots, it's gonna be self-regulatory to an extent. And this isn't to say that if this were implemented, all of a sudden, 2 years from now, we have things popping up all over the
I
place
think
because
if you had a list of what would be allowed, it would make it'd be clearer than just saying article this, article that, if you actually just came out and what exactly is
Well,
allowed.
Chris, we started to discuss that,
Yeah.
and where it got bogged down is when we started talking about retail and specialty retail.
now when you say we started talking.
The committee, I'm
somebody-
sorry, the Route
somebody
138
knows what
steering
you're talking
committee
about.
started talking about, in particular, specialty retail. We spent multiple meetings hashing out the definition of specialty retail. Well, could it be a cigar shop? Well, could it be this? Well, it could be that. And what ended up happening is it became so micro that we lost perspective of, what's one person considers specialty retail, another person considers it different. And, well, okay, we'd like this in here, but not this, and this, but not this. Well, I don't know. One person, oh yeah, I'd love a cigar shop. No, I don't want a cigar shop. I don't want anything like that on Route 138. And you start getting into personal tastes. And that's where it starts to get bogged down.
Okay, so, it's,
Can we discuss it more after we read
An
and
order-
think about it?
Yep, an order for planning board to endorse it at this point in time. I think give that information to them, and I would probably I would probably suggest that it doesn't go on this next warrant. And because I do think something should be done. So if the board would like to actually engage in discussion on 138 and what actually, they feel should be there, then I think it's time the board gets involved instead of us spending years on these groups that are asked to be put together, and then we get to this point. And it's not an irrational or a last-minute thing, it's something that's been worked on. So I think it's time that if we're going to be looking for the planning board to endorse it, then I think it's time the planning board gets involved with Route 138 and not a steering
I think it
committee.
would also make sense to have this group you're saying this group has come up with this gateway thing,
But they-
have them come in here and explain it to us.
Actually, in the document, in the land use report, that first recommendation, not only to establish an overlay district, but they put it in the laps of the planning board to say the planning board developed.
Well, that's why I say, give them,
Yeah.
pass out that information,
Give us
and
the
they'll have it all, and then we'll go from there, and I think we can look at it and adjust it as needed. And
Because I believe the intent of the steering committee was to produce the land use study and make recommendations.
well, I think what's gonna happen, you have some large pieces of property over on 138 that the people that own them, they are gonna start coming forward over the next couple of years, I think, with petitions to change. And if they can rally up enough people at town meeting, then one parcel's, a section's gonna get changed, and then another section's gonna get changed, something different,
I
and
can tell you right now, I had a resident come to my office this afternoon and say that her and a few neighbors have already had discussions about getting together to potentially sell their properties to someone who may come along. So residents are already, the wheels are already spinning among the residents on
That we
138.
talked to 32 out of 36, and you're saying they all would like a zoning change.
Yeah. And they're the ones who.
I'm sure, I'm sure he can have them sign a affidavit saying that also.
They need to be the town meeting.
So, and that's what I've told them, that I've talked to them individually and said that this is something where we may end up having a public workshop, and they would need to let their voices be heard.
Any minutes,
I make a motion, we waive the reading and approve the minutes of August 21, 2014.
all in favor?
How about August 7th?
Oh, no, because you just have to sign them.
Aye.
Okay.
Invoices, we only had one, did it get sent back? Nope.
I haven't seen it.
Yes, it is, it's getting sent down now. Correspondence.
Only thing I saw was that Walmart.
Dear Mrs.
Mass
Broadway
DOT.
Traffic Signal Improvement, Broadway, 138, Center, Raynham. Enclosed, please find the revised 100% design package for proposed improvements for the intersection of Broadway, Route 138, and Center Street in Raynham. Did we get a,
No, that's just that we haven't gotten a copy of that yet. I just saw that tonight for the first time, so I was
Okay.
gonna contact
District
McMahon
5?
Associates or District 5 and say, okay, what's going on? It's clear that they're still kind of haggling out some things with those lights.
And they're paying
Well-
the police officers all this time to
Yep.
put something in there?
still there?
It's on Walmart's dime, so I'm just, now it's apparent that
Right.
this is gonna extend through the winter most likely.
Do you think they need police officers there all
Yes.
this time?
Dangerous detail.
Is it?
They
Yeah.
stand,
Yeah.
sometimes they stand in the middle of the road, sometimes they sit and do nothing for a period of time, and other
Well,
times they're overwhelmed.
2 days ago, I was pulling out and I couldn't get out, and he came out, he was
Stopped
standing in
traffic.
front of his truck, he came walking out, and he stopped traffic, and he let me, and he let somebody else behind me, and
I think it's real dangerous.
it's,
I think it is, I wouldn't want the job,
I wouldn't want that in the winter when it gets dark.
yeah?
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna see a little orange
Which is
flashlight.
why I'm bringing it up.
It's
so
worse-
it's
worse
gonna,
than a dog
I
track.
think, Chief of Police, if he has issues with it, then he's gonna have to bring it, bring it up and mention it, and then we'll have to address it at that time. So, all right, anything else? Motion made, meeting to be adjourned. Wayne, our cameraman, thank you very much, great job. And meeting adjourned.